Well, that was my sermon, Rejoice. I think I'm done. Today is the third Sunday of Advent, known as Gaudete Sunday. In Latin, Gaudete means rejoice. It's the Sunday where we are invited to pause from the busyness of life, to step back from the ups and downs, and to simply rejoice, Rejoice because Christ is near, because God's saving work is already underway, and because even in the waiting, God is present here with us. This Sunday is marked by a change in color to lighten it up. We light a rose-colored candle, which represents joy. We put a rose on the altar for Jesus' mother, and we turn from a penitential focus of serum blue or purple, depending, toward one of rejoicing. The rose candle reminds us that rejoicing is not merely a feeling, but a practice, a deliberate act of noticing God's work in our lives, giving thanks and celebrating the gifts that God places before us. Rejoicing is something we do, and joy is something we receive. Rejoicing is how we allow that joy to rise up in us, even in difficult and uncertain circumstances. To rejoice is not to deny the challenges of life or bury our heads in the sand, but rather to say that God is not finished yet. Rejoicing is an act of hope. It is an act of defiance against despair, fear, and weariness. And our readings today show us examples of what rejoicing looks like amid waiting and uncertainty, right amid the wilderness. In the Gospel of John, John the Baptist is in prison. Now remember, last week it was John the Baptist Sunday, he was in the wilderness, and in the wilderness is the beginning of the good news. That's what Matthew's Gospel said. And today, John is in prison. He's in a different type of wilderness. And in that prison cell, John sends word to Jesus and asks, "Are you the one who is to come? Or are we to wait for another?" As if to say, are you the one that the prophet Isaiah spoke of, in whose arrival we would see the wilderness rejoicing? Instead of giving a direct answer, yes or no, to John's question, Jesus points to what is happening in the world around them. He quotes the prophet Isaiah, which we just had our first reading, whose words were a message of hope to Israel in exile, a different kind of wilderness. And Jesus tells John, "The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the deaf hear, the poor have good news brought to them. In Jesus' arrival, the wilderness shall rejoice." Jesus' message to John holds up a well-known vision for the arrival of God's kingdom, a kingdom that is being born in the shell of the old. Jesus holds up this image to John as to say, though the vision tarry, wait on the Lord. In your wilderness, wait on the Lord. In the chances and changes of this life, wait on the Lord. Right where you are in your grief, wait for the Lord's presence, for he is coming. God's kingdom is breaking into the world, even amid uncertainty, even in exile, even in wilderness, even when life feels like it's just too much. God's promises are at work. God's presence is still coming. And we see this rejoicing embodied in Mary. After the angel Gabriel comes to Mary and tells her that she will bear a son, which is called the Annunciation, and that's next week's reading, so come back and hear Father Edmund preach on that. Mary's first response to the angel is yes, yes. Followed by her yes is this song of praise known as the Magnificat, often set to different musical settings that we rejoice in hearing in the Anglican tradition. Mary says, "My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord." Mary's joy is rooted in God and God's faithfulness, God's faithful presence of Emmanuel, God with us. Her song of praise is an act of hope amid a hard and uncertain world. For Mary's world was marked by Roman occupation, struggle, and oppression. She was a woman in the Greco-Roman times, which wasn't easy. Yet, amid these realities, amid all of it, she rejoices in God's presence that is drawing near. And on this third Sunday of Advent, we are invited to do the same. We're invited to notice God is still at work, to give God thanks, to celebrate, and to let joy grow within us. We're invited to be like Mary and to simply rejoice at the coming of our King. So I wonder, what do you have to rejoice about today? Where do you see God's light and presence breaking into your life, even in the wilderness or uncertain moments, the busy moments or moments of waiting for God's promises to be actualized in the mid of the throes of grief? There is so much to rejoice about. This week, we had the embodiment of this weird juxtaposition of wilderness and rejoicing in the emails you received. We had a great big announcement that I'm about to focus on about a gift given, and we also had a death notice of one of our pillars, Janet Jones' passing, has gone to be with the Lord. And in the middle of it all, this is what we call life. It is the tenderness, the fragility, the rejoicing, the sorrow, the celebration. And this is what Rose Sunday holds for all of us. This week, we heard about an email announcement. And if you didn't get to hear about this announcement, this wonderful news, I'd like to share it with you now. The Lane sisters, Martha and Katie, who are with us now, who are longtime members of St. Thomas Church, have donated a portion of their land to the church for the Rector Housing Campaign. It is an incredible gift that we will celebrate today in this sermon and at announcements and following the service in the Great Hall with a coffee hour, a festive coffee hour, and a special interview of the sisters. And for those of you who cannot make it to the coffee hour, I'd like to share a bit of the story behind their gift. When Martha first learned about the Forward in Faith campaign, she prayed, "Lord, if you want me to do something, show me." And for a while, nothing seemed to happen. Crickets. Ever have that in your prayer life? You ask God, "What do you want me to do? Show me." And it's crickets. Then on St. Patrick's Day, you gotta love the luck of the Irish, she woke up thinking, what if we gave the cottage property to the church? She prayed again, "Lord, if it's your will, make it obvious." Ever pray that prayer? Meanwhile, Katie had been discerning what to do with their property also. With no heirs interested, this gift became a way to honor their parents, support the church, and to preserve the land. When Martha shared the idea with Katie, expecting her to say no, she was surprised to hear her say yes. Together, they allowed gifting to become an act of rejoicing as they collaborated with what God is doing among us here at St. Thomas, much like Mary's yes to God's plan. And I love, love, love the story that they tell about their mother, who is a pillar here, Betty, who has since gone on to be with the Lord, and Bob, who also was a pillar here, who many of you knew, who has gone on to be with the Lord. I love the story that they used to share about Betty and Bob. Apparently, if the girls were acting up, the girls, the two of them, and then their brother, Betty would look at them and say, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to give this property to St. Thomas Church. I think they straightened up and they gave the property to St. Thomas Church. And they are delighted to honor their parents' legacy in this gift. Martha and Katie are filled with great joy in the act of giving. Their gift was not just generous, it was an act of faithful participation in God's work and has caused deep rejoicing for us here at St. Thomas Church. Stories like these remind us that God's kingdom often unfolds quietly through trust and prayer, and often when we offer our gifts to the common good, to God's vision for us here at St. Thomas Church. So today, we rejoice together, rejoice in the coming of Christ and the faithfulness of God in our own lives, and in this extraordinary gift that the Lane sisters have given us that is God's provision for us. This Gaudete Sunday, as we are awashed in rose, let us pause, look around, and join Mary as we rejoice. And let us not hesitate, as the prayer "Don't Hesitate" by Mary Oliver on the front of your leaflet suggests. Let us not hesitate to rejoice. She writes, if you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you noticed it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Beloved, rejoice. Amen.